All right, so good evening, everyone, who is basically nobody right now, from what I'm seeing. Uh, well, that was expected since I didn't share the streaming. I'm a little embarrassed now because for you who know my work, who know the ChoppaRants, that's in Portuguese, tradition in Portuguese. But I'm trying something different now uh, because I was seeing some comments by Exagod, who is the BitChute app developer. If you don't know, BitChute's a platform for video, an alternative to YouTube. And I gave him some support, some emotional support, and he recognized it. So first of all, shout out to him. And he said that he tried to listen to my podcasts and lives and whatever, but he couldn't because he couldn't understand it. Thought it was in Spanish. It's in Portuguese, but I can understand how he would how he would think it, being an English speaker, and that makes me think that I could try to produce some content in English. I'm not as proficient as I would like to be, but that's a long term goal. I have been thinking about this for a while to produce some English content and act like a bridge, maybe between the libertarian communities in Brazil and in other countries. The truth is, when you produce content in English, you have much more reach, and that's an effort I can try to make. Even to practice my conversation skills, I don't have much experience doing that. I hope the sound is not too loud. The game sounds not too loud. Last time I tried to do this live, I was really distracted by the sound, so I'm not listening to it now. But I hope we can. It's not much louder than my voice. I try to put it in a good level. We'll see later. But okay, so tonight we're playing Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. I have a a moment of nostalgia. I remember my times playing PlayStation 2 when I didn't care much about all the things I care today. Life seemed easier, and I remember how much I played that game. In the PS2 times, there were two games. There are two Dragon Ball Z games which are competing for the best one. The first was the Budokai 3 for the Budokai franchise, Dragon Ball Z Budokai franchise, and there was the Budokai Tenkaichi franchise, which reached its peak in the third game as well. And they really competing for the best. I can say that Budokai 3 is maybe a better fight game, but Budokai Tenkaichi is a better Dragon Ball Z fighting game because it brings all the exploration of the scenario during the fight. I mean, you can fly anywhere, and Budokai 3 is more like a fighting game. It's like the difference between Xenoverse now, Xenoverse 2, which is a good Dragon Ball Z simulator, and Dragon Ball Fighter Z, which is as a fighting game, is awesome. The visuals are awesome. It really brings the feeling of the anime, visually speaking. But okay, oh, apparently lost connection. I'm sorry. I don't know where you lost me, but I was just talking about the Budokai and Budokai Tenkaichi franchises. How I like them very much in my PS2 times, which are long gone, sadly. But let's play some team battles here in Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, which is a nice feature. It was a new feature at the time, which Xenoverse improved upon, allowing like real-time team battles. Right, you're not switching between characters, but you have really many characters fighting at the same time. It's neat. I hope to play it someday, but for now, let's just try some emulated Wii game here. I'll put everything on random, just to not think too much about which character to pick. So let's see if I can concentrate on the game and on speaking at the same time, because I have some trouble talking Portuguese already. Let's see if I don't stall trying to do both things at the same time. Okay, nice team. Take a look. Jeez. It would be funny if we had Border at the same team. Okay, this Piccolo is trouble. Oh, CPU is mocking me. Omega Shenron is a bit of an overkill, right? It could give me Gogeta. Let's see. Namek is always a good fighting ground. Really nostalgic for someone who's a DBZ fan, right? I think most people think the Frieza Saga is the best by far, right? It's tension all the time. Great writing. By Dragon Ball Z standards, at least.
Feel the power that Ginyu falls. Jace!
Hope it's not too loud there. Maybe I can fix the sound after when editing. Oh. My energy is gone. Okay, so let's start with the topic now, because last time I kept procrastinating and didn't talk about what I wished to talk at all, or not much. I'm talking here about the problems of outliers, and I'm saying this in the context of libertarian and anarcho-capitalist groups or movements. If you're not from Brazil and you're watching this, in recent years there was a big shift in the way people are thinking about politics, and that gave room to more right-wing politics and some libertarian ones as well, hardcore libertarians, should I say, anarcho-capitalists. And there's been a huge growth in this community in Brazil, the anarcho-capitalist community, libertarian community. And it seemed all good at the beginning, but we're seeing some problem that I think helps with a lot of people, a lot of movements, a lot of groups who diverge from the mainstream, right? Is that the first adopters, so to speak, the early adopters of these ideas tend to be outliers, right? When you talk about I think you're familiar with the concept of the bell curve, which represents a normal distribution, right? A Gaussian distribution of something, and some people apply it to societal aspects. If you're familiar with the libertarian community, maybe you know Stefan Molyneux. He uses this a lot. He talks about it a lot. In other contexts, right? He has all that thing about IQ that he gives him some trouble, but you can apply it to other societal aspects. Okay, so let's try Piccolo. And when you talk like about differences between sexes, between genders, there's some different bell curves for men and women. Like I don't know the data very well, but you can say that regarding behavior, the distribution for men are broader than you see with women. Women tend to be more stable, more close to the norm. That's where the term normal comes from, right? It's close to the norm. So they tend to be generally more stable in some aspects, and men are more spread out. The consequence of that, or better, what this represents is that at the same time that you can have more men who are geniuses, you can have more men who are pretty retarded, right? Or psychos or something like it. And maybe that explains somehow why some edgy movements or tendencies tend to be adopted earlier by more men, because as there are more outliers, there are more people who deviate from the norm. Maybe they are more open to embrace those new ideas. But and that's a necessary thing. Outliers are a necessary thing because they are the ones who bring change. Normally, not positive change, but sometimes bad change. But we have to deal with the consequences. Oh, I didn't realize it. I didn't put an infinite time here. I'll try to. Sorry. I have to set the fight again. But the existence of those outliers is important because they are the first adopters of new ideas who potentially bring positive change to society and whatever. But the bad side of it, the bad effect, is that people who are more willing to embrace good new ideas are more willing to embrace potentially bad ideas, right? And that's a problem we verify in the libertarian community in Brazil, and I guess you have the same problem in other countries, mainly the US, because it's the libertarian community is a proponent of free speech and allowing different opinions, if they are unpopular, tend to attract people who are not very desirable, to be honest. And those are the bad outliers, should I say. And you see this in groups, in libertarian, in ANCAP groups here. There's a lot of people who try to come up with weird synthesis of libertarian thinking and other things. I ended up in a heated discussion on Gab with some said national socialist libertarian, as it is possible, was trying to argue for really fucked up things. I mean, you see a lot of in Brazilian communities as well. The guy embraces the anti-state thing, but at the same time he embraces all that, let's say, Jews thing, you know, trying to blame some sort of group for every problem, and it's really ironic, right? How someone who is supposedly defending an individualist fault on one side is basing his understanding of the world in generalizations. Doesn't seem promising, but you get a lot of this. And if you oppose, then you're always the not true libertarian, or you acting in favor of the globalists. Of the globalists, of the power elites, or you are the libertine and whatever. And don't take me wrong, I think globalists are something to be worried about, right? Trying to bring about a global government is the end goal of many people, many powerful people, and you should fight against it. But if you start acting dumb, right? If you start having a simple answer for every problem, if you can't deal with more complex problems, you end up not just making things more difficult for you, but you start making people who are more reasonable or more complacent run from you, right? That's one of the great the outlier dilemma that I talk about in the title of this stream. That at the same time that you need outliers to start something, to start questioning something, the same outliers end up preventing other people from from understanding those ideas, because why would you want to be part of a group of a bunch of weirdos, right? This affects particularly women when they try to understand libertarianism or other ideas of other group, and they are received by a lot of some, I wouldn't say aggressive, but hostile behavior, right? Oh, because they're women, and I watched this channel about how they are about hypergamy, female hypergamy, and I know they are harmful to our movement and whatever, and and then you're never able to move forward, right? It's people can't even find a way to create a healthy environment. I'm not saying that you have the obligation of creating a healthy environment for other people, but if you're trying to build something, right? I start with the assumption that libertarians want to build a libertarian society, want to build something that works and doesn't need the state, doesn't need some bureaucrat creating a lot of rules and laws. A libertarian would trust the power of communities to organize themselves, and if he's not making his job to allow that, so what kind of message is he communicating, right? So that's a really tough problem, and it's not easy to solve. It's not a matter of arguing. You understand what I'm saying? Sorry, I'm trying to concentrate on both things at the same time. I have to keep a line of thought and and beat Kiwi at the same time. Oh, now this Majin Buu. Great. This guy's trouble. There's another problem with Outliers is that they do not tend to produce much for... I mean, they tend to be productive, but in a different sense. They can produce a lot of like intellectual content, but it's difficult for you to see an outlier producing some how can I say, infrastructure for a movement, right? You need people who are not that antisocial and are able to organize something. And these people were many times prevented from coming to this movement, this set of ideas, because of the barrier that outliers create. Is really a dilemma how to solve this. And it's a problem for talking about BitChute, as I said in the beginning, about Exagod, who's the app developer. And by the way, try his app. He's doing a great job, and he's doing all by himself to make BitChute more popular. He's not a main developer. He's not a developer of the site. Those are Ray and Rich, but he's doing by himself an app, a mobile app for people to have better access to videos. Oh, crap. Okay. I think yeah. And he always talk about it. He has a podcast as well. Exagod has a podcast as well, and he always talk about these problems of adoption for BitChute, right? Because the early adopters will be this kind of people as well. What do you think? Why do you think someone who is at YouTube and he likes mainstream content will like to move to BitChute? You just say, well, why would I move it, right? YouTube's working fine. I can watch the things I want, and I wouldn't care. Why would I care that much for free speech and how the YouTube team is boycotting people. I never watched them. So the early adopters, the early supporters of platforms like BitChute, BitTube, Library, and all those would be mostly outliers in the good and bad sense. But at the same time that it's important that these people exist to support those new platforms, those new alternatives. You always get a lot of bad users, right? You have a lot of assholes there who can't even watch a video without accusing you of something, of being controlled opposition or something like it, of not talking about the Jews or some other group. It's really annoying. And you can see that in the content as well, right? Imagine a mainstream channel. Even there's some mainstream channels who put their content on BitChute, but they don't brag too much about it because to be fair, they don't need to be associated with a lot of channels which are there, and talk about sensible matters in a rather unsensible way. Sorry if I'm sounding like a soy boy, but that's something we can worry about, right? There are different ways to talk about the same issue, and discuss if those issues exist. You don't need to be an asshole about it. I think that the solution for a start of a solution would happen if some people who are, how should I say, more compliant, some people who seems to be more reasonable, start talking about the same issues the outliers talk about. And how let me explain that better. There's a saying that, as the saying goes, when the decent people do not talk about something which should be discussed, the indecent people start talking about it, right? I think the history of the bell curve theory about IQ and behavior has a story like that. There was a researcher who talked about it, but his work was mostly neglected, was mostly ignored because it wasn't politically correct. So the first people who start taking him seriously were people who mixed his bell curve theory with another theories, right? Out of personal interest. Maybe if people started discussing his ideas first, people in academia started discussing his ideas first and not just ignoring it because it sounded bad, there wouldn't be too much space for like supremacists or something like it to use his theory in their favor, right? I think that's how you deal with outliers. If you try to isolate them, they'll just reinforce their belief. If people who try to be more reasonable start talking about it, having the courage to talk about it, we can have a more healthy discussion and don't associate and don't give the monopoly of the ideas or some intellectual spaces to outliers. And at the same time, as we're not excluding them anymore, we're not isolating them anymore, we can recognize the work they do to help new platforms grow, right? I think I'm being understood here. I'm not, as I said, I'm not completely proficient in English, but I think I can make myself understandable. And that, I think that topic was a great topic for starting to make some English content, but that's something that affects everyone, right? Oh, really, really zoning me.
It's all over for you.
Because at the end, we need change. We need change for what we have now. The situation in Brazil, in the US, or any other place is getting really, really crazy nowadays. We're reaching. I think you agree with me that we're reaching a crisis, right? We're reaching a new global crisis, and that's the time to do something about it. To prevent that, we have a new. Prevent that we have a new step in the concentration of power. If libertarians don't start talking about more things besides just non-aggression principle and civil liberties and whatever, we wouldn't be able to prevent some bad changes. And in the sense, we have to be some sort of outliers ourselves, supporting different platforms, supporting, bringing important discussions that people are afraid to talk about, and occupy spaces, right? I think that was quicker than expected. I normally start rambling about many things, and my streams end up being longer than I expect. But as I'm trying to do this in English today, I think I don't have as much things to say as I do in Portuguese, right? Oh, a lot of destructivism there. But let me try to finish this fight. Maybe I can think about something new. The fighting poses are great. The Ginyu Force could have a comeback, right? They are really they're really funny. The Frieza saga, I mean, that's how you write anime. And don't take me wrong, I'm not that much of a weeaboo of an anime fan, but that's part of my childhood. Oh, that was a great thing about Budokai Tenkaichi, right? You miss a lot of shots. It's more cinematic than Budokai 3. Oh. And they pushed PlayStation 2 to its limits, right? The cell shading, the filters were really great in that game for that age, right? For that year. It's I think the game which went closer to reach the top graphics and the top gameplay. It's a shame that it's part of a generation that, in my opinion, wouldn't have the processing power, the needed processing power to make it a perfect game. Then you have Raging Blast in the PS3, and it wasn't as great as Budokai Tenkaichi, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Oh, so I think it's most like this, right? Mostly this. That was a experiment. I hope to produce more content in English in the future. And no, if you're a new viewer, I hope you like it, and give me some feedback if I'm understandable. I have not a good idea of how well I can pronounce things, but I'll try to improve. If I keep doing this, I'll try to use it as a way to practice my conversation skills, and as that's a needed skill. Let's be honest, English is a universal language and will allow me to reach more people, right? So that's it for now, and thanks for watching. Bye.